Okay, so Judge Pendergrass, you stole my thunder. I was going to give an introduction on what historic preservation is. Now that you've already covered that, we can just move right into the program. I'm really happy that you received the proclamation. It's a good segue, though, in what I'm going to talk about tonight. Historic preservation and the importance of protecting, preserving, and promoting our culture and history. They asked me, where do you want to do the program at? And I said, well, I've never been to the Buford School. And so I'm really glad to see that this is under the charge, the purview of the Baxter County Historical Society. It's a structure that is well worth keeping and preserving and protecting and promoting with meetings and programs of different sorts. So about 2 years ago, I landed in Baxter County, Arkansas. Just a little bit of an introduction of who I am and what I've been doing for the last 25 years. I've been with the state of Arkansas this November, 24 years. My first 17 years was with Arkansas State Parks. I worked various positions with them. Interpreter, which is a fancy description for education specialist. Then I worked as an assistant superintendent in this area at Mammoth Springs State Park. And then I got promoted and managed 2 different sites for the state parks. Davidsonville Historic State Park over near Pocahontas on the Black River. I was there about 5 years, and then I moved on to the Delta in Wilson, Arkansas, and managed the Hampson collection. For those of you who are familiar with the Mississippian period site at Nodina in Mississippi County, Arkansas, the Hampson Museum, through a donation by Dr. Hampson in the 50s, houses that nationally renowned collection. And moving forward to November of last year, while I was there 6 years, we worked really hard in writing a blueprint for a much-needed new museum and a collection management facility and exhibit gallery. That has come to pass. So if you have not had an opportunity to travel to Wilson, Arkansas, Mississippi County, go over there and see the brand new 8,200 square foot Hampson Archaeological Museum State Park with one of the most important ceramic and lithic collections from the prehistoric time period of Native Americans in Arkansas. When I left those folks, I went to work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for roughly 2 years at White River National Wildlife Refuge east of Stuttgart as a ranger. And then I decided to get back into state government and literally went to work on the same property at a conservation property owned by Arkansas Game and Fish. So I worked about 4 years for their education division. Really wasn't looking for another job, and a friend of mine brought to my attention this property on the White River that just come up on the radar. And one of the time periods that I enjoy interpreting and managing the most is the early frontier. So I threw my name in the hat, it all worked out, and my wife Jackie and I moved to Mountain Home, which we had hoped to retire here about 10 years from now. I grew up in an area just like the Baxter County area. If you know where Mena, Arkansas is, I grew up in the Kiamishi Mountains of southeastern Oklahoma, 40 miles west of Mena, and it's just like the Ozarks here in Baxter County. And my wife's from Thayer, Missouri. Okay, so it's a coming home for us, and so we were really happy to get up here in God's country, the land of milk and honey. So here we are. We started planning 2 years ago the projects we just finished last week. And the city of Norfork and several nonprofits over the years has managed the Wolf House property. Baxter County Quorum Court, most recently, Judge Pendergrass is who I have worked with when we were making this transition 2 years ago to the agency I work for, has managed the Wolf House property. And everybody has done an excellent job with the resources available to them in keeping that property moving forward. The Wolf House, the territorial courthouse, shouldn't be there today. There is no rhyme or reason why that building should be there today. Historically speaking, why should it not be there? Any ideas?
Civil War.
Civil War. This country here the cultural landscape was dominated by both Union and Confederate troops. And General Samuel R. Curtis, who's best known for the Union victory at Pea Ridge, in April of 1862, charged his men to scour the White River Valley, take siege to any ferry operations, bring back anything and everything available to them to further their campaign. And during that spring campaign, they come up on the Wolf House. There was a small skirmish on the river, and they normally, Confederate or Union troops, when they were in possession of a structure like that, whether it be a courthouse or whether it be someone's home, they burned it to the ground so that resource wouldn't be available to somebody else. Lucky us, that didn't happen. And so we started taking a hard look at what was going to be available to us and what we could start doing to help preserve and protect and promote the state's newest historic site. So the Jacob Wolf House Historic Site is the state's newest historic site. And I actually work for the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, which is a division of the Department of Arkansas Heritage. As you know, the Wolf House was restored from 1999 to 2002. Tommy Jameson Architects out of Little Rock oversaw that, and they did an absolutely excellent job in building a new roof, reconstructing the west side porch, new flooring on the bottom floor, redobbing the whole structure, remortaring the whole structure. So it only needed a nominal amount of improvements. The John Wolf cabin, Jacob's brother's cabin, which originally was located on the west bank of the White River down around Calico Rock, and was moved to the site in the late 80s, early 90s to complement the storyline there and the architecture. It had never been restored, so we did an exterior restoration to it. Then and we're going to get into all of that here in a minute. I just want to give you an introduction of what the high points were on what we could do. Then there's a log structure on the south end of the property that was built in the 70s that was used as a community center and a small museum. And we've renovated it for our administrative offices, front desk operation for visitors. And so what I want to talk to you about today is how we approach this project, and take a look at some of the challenges we had, take a look at some of the things we didn't know that we figured out along the way, and the people that was involved in making this thing happen. So let's get started. The company, Tommy Jameson Architects, was the architects again for this project. The company who was awarded the bid to do the actual construction was Jones Consulting Incorporated out of Hot Springs, Arkansas. And they did an excellent job with the historic preservation methods that they used at the site. So I get into a little bit here talking about what is historic preservation and how it benefits all of us in our communities. The Jacob Wolf House is the oldest public structure in Arkansas. It was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1973. we're heavily involved in historic preservation with National Register properties or state registered properties. I don't know if the Buford Schoolhouse is on either of those. Do you?
It is.
Is it the National Register or?
On both.
Oh, on both, great. So with the National Register property, as you probably know, with this property being designated as such, you have to follow the Department of Interior National Park Service Historic Preservation Guidelines, okay? Pretty strict on what you do and what you can't do. And so we always had to keep that in mind with some of the challenges we had and how we were going to pursue it. So there is the Territorial Courthouse, the Wolf House. Some folks who visit ask, well, why do you interpret it as both? And I said, well, it was both. From 1829 to 1835, it was the Izard County Courthouse. And in 1835, the seat of justice moved to Athens, Arkansas. And then it reverted back to the ownership of Jacob Wolf and his family. It became the Wolf family home from 1835 until Jacob's death in 1863. So today, when you visit us, and hopefully you'll come see us soon, and especially for Pioneer Days, May 17th and 18th, the inside of the courthouse is now furnished with period replica furniture that one of our conservatories, the Historic Arkansas Museum in Little Rock, made out of walnut. And so we have 1830s ladder back chairs, and we have 1830s, 1840s furniture that it is a working courthouse, okay? So we have the county clerk's office, we have the jury room, and then upstairs is the courtroom. How did we fund these projects? ANCRC grant projects for the Wolf House, for the Wolf Cabin, and for the structure that will be our administrative offices and also used as a visitor contact. ANCRC stands for Arkansas Natural Cultural Resource Council grants. It's funded by the state real estate tax. We had a grant body awarded us of $292,500 to start the projects, okay? The John Wolf Cabin, if you have visited the property, this was its original state. Well, let me take that back. It's not its original state, but it's what was reconstructed when they moved the structure to the property in the late 80s, early 90s. Here is the front porch. Here is a side view with the chimney, and then here was the rear porch. Now, again, I apologize for these small pictures, but what's important about this, we had a lot of information to go by on the Wolf House, okay? We have a lot of archival documentation. We have first-person letters. We have census records. We have stories that have been passed down from Wolf family descendants and people in the Baxter County community. We had very little information about the John Wolf Cabin. So I'm working with Tommy Jameson Architects, and last May we did a final walkthrough at the property. This is what we're going to do at the Wolf House with the money we got. This is what we're going to do to the administrative building. This is what we're going to do to the John Wolf Cabin, so forth and so on. So here we are, standing on the front porch of the Wolf Cabin, just before Memorial Day weekend. Nice, warm, sunny day. And one of the gentlemen with Tommy Jameson Architects said, "Marlon, there's a lady standing back here. And I think she's wanting to visit with you." So I turned around, and there's this elderly lady, about 5'3" or 4", standing back there underneath the shade of that large elm tree that's there. So I stepped off the porch and I introduced myself, and I said, "I'm Marlon Mowdy, I'm the site manager. How can I help you?" She goes, "My name is Adele Wolf, and that's my great-great-grandfather's cabin." Oh. Clouds parted, the sun come down. I'm like, this just can't get any better, okay? And I said, "Well, I really need to visit with you. Perhaps you can fill in a few gaps for us." She was on her way to Moccasin Creek to a family reunion, And in the back of her little white SUV were 3 cardboard boxes crammed full of John Wolf family history. With photos of this structure in the late 1890s, early 1900s. I said, would you mind if I just copied some of the most immediate stuff that you have available? So I made copies of 30 or 40 pages and filed it away. And we've been staying in touch. Well, come to find out, I got another story about another gentleman who actually reconstructed this. So come to find out, the pitch of the roof in its earliest stages was a little bit taller. The chimney, this is not the original chimney, and nor is it historical from that time period. They built this chimney on site when they reconstructed the cabin. And then the back porch was actually enclosed with the original structure. Now, as a lot of these structures, it's not uncommon when you have a structure, I'll use the Wolf House as an example. From the time it was built in 1829 until just before the 1930s, it went through many readaptations. And the east side facing Highway 5 during the first restoration, during WPA days in the 30s, had a porch built on it with an outside stairway. Then there was a west side porch, okay? Different doors and windows, which we have some of those doors and windows in storage. Many different uses, many different families, especially, you know, Jacob died there in 1863, then one of his sons stayed there until 1865, and then after 1865, it was owned by many different families. One of my favorite stories is by the 1920s, 2 businessmen purchased it, petitioned it off, in other words, turned it into a 2-story apartment complex. One family lived up top, another family lived downstairs. So these things go through a lot of readaptive uses over the years. John Wolf Cabin's no different. So when you're visiting the site and you don't know this, you're thinking, well, obviously this structure's really old. And it looks like it's from the time period, okay? About a month ago, I'm getting ready to go home, and there was a gentleman and his wife sitting in a car out in the parking lot. And they'd been sitting there for about 20 minutes. I thought, well, I better go up there and visit with those folks. And he said, I just wanted to stop by and tell you, young man, you guys are doing an excellent job and continuing to do what me and Bob Bounds started. I said, I know of Mr. Bounds. And I can't remember this gentleman's last name, but I believe his first name was Henry. Anyway, he said, I said, well, what did you do here? He said, well, we disassembled the John Wolf cabin, and then we brought it up here and reassembled it. And I'm like, clouds parted, sun come down. And I'm going, holy moly. I said, you mind if I ask you some questions, because we have limited information. And he said, no. I said, how much of the material in that cabin would you estimate is real, is authentic from when its initial construction? He said probably around 70%. He said some of it we couldn't replicate, some of it we had to take to a sawmill in Mountain Home, and because it was rotten and no longer usable. These things happen, okay? So little by little, things keep falling in place to keep us moving in the right direction. So restoring the past, here we are. We have removed the front porch, okay? We're getting down underneath the foundation here. Then we removed the back porch. Then we started tearing down the old chimney that was not historically correct. And then we started cutting back the roof line. Now, let me explain why we did these things. Looking at the photos of the structure dating to the late 1890s, the pitch was much taller, the chimney was much smaller in width and in height, and actually followed the design similar, albeit smaller, that's what's on the Wolf House. The back porch was actually enclosed, okay? And then the reconstruction of this, the eaves of the roof stuck out probably 18 inches. And the design of roofs during this time period, using those photos from Adele and looking at the design of the Wolf House, they were much closer to the walls of the structure. Here we are with the new front porch constructed. These are all new cedar posts, okay? The wood, all of the wood, replacement wood at the Wolf House and at the John Wolf cabin is cypress. It weathers well, it ages well, and it lasts longer. If either of these structures, as an example, the Wolf House, it was made out of yellow pine. If those structures were made out of, say, white oak or red oak, they would have rotted and fell apart years ago. So we're putting a new front porch on there.
I've got a question for you. Where does cypress come from? I've not heard of any cypress trees, way out in the Delta, but not in here.
All of them, our material was special ordered.
Oh, okay. I thought the original cabin was made of.
No.
How did they move that wood out here?
No. Our historic preservation practices and looking to the future and following the design of the historic photos and then of similar cabins dating to the, photography didn't come about until, outside of daguerreotypes, you're looking at 1840s, 1850s, a little bit later. So we looked at designs of cabins during the early to mid 19th century, and then we had these photos, okay? What can last? What will last? What has been used at other historic preservation projects that were similar to ours? And cypress. Cypress is a good material to use, and that's what we did. Then we built a back porch on the cabin, okay? When you are following the same construction methods and using material that is going to last for a long time, you can't go down to Walmart or Meeks or Home Depot and get you a big 5-gallon bucket of screws, Okay, so we used cut nails. Everything from the really large rose head cut nail to the small siding cut nails, okay? It was very, very important, even for the passerby who may not know much about history, that this be done with a historical application. The finished work is this product.
Wow, that's nice.
Here's the new roof. Now, shingles during this time period, white oak for the most part. What we're using today is 5/8 inch thick, cedar shaped, fire retardant shingles, okay? You see the turkey feathers up here? Okay, just like on the Wolf House. They didn't have roof caps back then, okay? So the turkey feathers were a row of shingles that stuck up somewhere between 12 and 15 inches high on the windward side of the cabin So the elements would project up over the top, rain, sleet, snow, wind, whatever, and it would help keep the roof dry. Pretty ingenious, wasn't it? So that's exactly what we applied on the John Wolfe cabin as well. Now over here on the side, we put up batten boarding, okay? Siding with batten strips to enclose where the fireplace used to be. And then we use batten boarding over here on the back porch as well. And then we have cypress floor and cypress siding and cypress handrails, except for right here. We noticed in Adele's photos, the porch had a bucket bench. Okay? That rail's about this wide. And it was used for common practical purposes. Lay your laundry across it, set a bucket up there, whatever. It was a bench that was applied here for the front porch. Okay, so we call it a bucket bench. All right, so that's the finished work that you will see when you come to the historic site. Now, you might ask, well, that's all intriguing, very interesting, young man. What are you going to do about the chimney? We had almost $300,000. We needed $600,000. Okay. Next year, I'm going to apply for another grant. We'll see whether we get an award next year or hopefully in the next coming years, a couple of years. We'll come back, and as far as the Wolfe cabin is concerned, then we will reconstruct a historic chimney that will go on the Wolfe cabin at that time. So future grant projects are on down the road. The Jacob Wolfe house. Here's the Wolfe house, okay? The west side, which pre-Civil War was the front of the property, facing the White River. Here is the south side with second edition chimneys. I get a lot of questions about the limestone chimney and then the upper half of the south side chimney being brick. What's that all about? From the extensive research that has been done about these chimneys and the archaeological evidence under the foundations of the Wolfe house, we believe the second edition chimneys were built sometime around 1870. We also believe that the brick that was left over from Jacob's initial chimneys, fired and kilned in the White River Valley area, was put on top of the south side chimney as to commend the work that Jacob had originally done. Okay. Then the north side chimney, it's all limestone. Okay. Here is the east side facing Highway 5, which after the Civil War became the front of the property. They reversed. Okay? It wasn't until about 1838 when what we would call today the Army Corps of Engineers, along with slaves, constructed what we know today as Highway 5. Okay? It was also during that time period used as the northern route of the Trail of Tears. Jacob, as being a representative for the north central part of Arkansas and of Izard County, actually got another road built as a part of the old Southwest Trail, and came in on the south end, and then that road that's Highway 5 today was known as the Jackson Fort Smith Military Road. So pre-Civil War, this was the front of the property with the porch facing the White River and the North Fork of the White River. Natural stopping off point, a natural port of call, keelboats, flatboats. By 1831, the first paddle wheel steamship come into the area. After the Civil War, though, those dynamics changed. The demographics in the area changed. The road system was a lot better than it once was. And that was still a leap of faith, okay, even by the Civil War times. And then the east side. And archaeologically speaking, we know this as a fact because we're finding on the west side of the property pre-Civil War those type of artifacts that would have spoke to the earlier time period. On the east side, after the Civil War, we're finding those kind of artifacts that speaks to a new use of the property. Okay. So it's not only a very significant early 19th century historic site, it's a very significant early 19th century cultural site as well. And we work with Arkansas Archaeological Survey on not only the work that was done there during the restoration from 99 to 02, but last May, they spent about the whole month of May doing a ground penetrating radar project where they scoured over every inch of property that they could access. And the radar equipment was operated off a satellite and it would read up to 4 feet deep. And so the report showed us a lot of anomalies under the ground that will bode well for future investigations. We're excited about that. So here we are at the Wolf House. Here's the breezeway. Now don't show up with your metal detectors. Okay? It's protected by law. So for those of you, and we got new security lighting on the property. And you're going to be on candid camera. As I speak, I'm taking security bids to enhance security there. Protect, preserve. So here we are in the breezeway, and we've got it just tore all to heck. It looks worse than the Sal's bed. Just in 20 years' time, okay? Rain, wind. We had to replace in the breezeway new floor joists, okay? And then here we are with a new ADA ramp in the front. And here we are on the west side, where the west side porch is. And this right here has a large dowel rod sticking through it. So here are new floor joists on the west side that were put in place exactly where the other ones were, and then secured, not by bolts, not by screws, but how they would have done it 190, 200 years ago, okay, with wooden dowels. And then here's the completion of those steps on the west side. So we left no stone unturned in following these restoration principles, practices, and methods in ensuring that the integrity of the historical structure was preserved. All right, now the turkey feathers on the Wolf House had to be replaced, okay? Over the last 20 years, the wind and them coming loose, they were all over the place. So we've now got a new ridge line, new turkey feathers up there. The south side upper chimney mortar was falling out, and we had to re-tuck point that chimney. And then some daubing, some mortar had to be replaced in the exterior of the Wolf Houses as well. Excuse me. Well, here's the new turkey feathers at the Wolf House. And here is the finished work. New parking lot. For those of you who have been there over the last 30 or 40 years, you know we needed a new parking lot. New parking lot, new curb stops, and looky here. Brand new snake rail fencing replicated of the 1830s, 1840s. All right? So, very inviting.
What kind of wood is the fence?
I'm sorry?
What kind of wood is it?
Western cedar. Guess where we had to order that from? What? Well, sure, yeah. Surprisingly enough, during our research, there were not very many companies out there that mass-produced split rail fencing. There's not somebody down the road at Old Joe who has a barnyard full of split rail fencing. So we had to order this, special order it, and we was able to fund two sides, the east side and the north side. We repurposed some of the older fence and rebuilt the west side. So future grant projects, whenever we have an opportunity to get funding again, we will rebuild the west side with the same split rail fencing, okay? The administrative building. Used in the 70s as a community center and a small museum. And today, we did repairs on the outside. We completely renovated the inside. Here's a new porch going on the front of it. Here's a front desk operation, almost complete. It is complete, obviously, now. And then here is a shelving and storage space in one of the offices. So it will be our administrative offices. We have new ADA compliant restrooms inside, new front desk operation, and I have recently requested a retail operation, small retail operation inside. So once we get approval for that, then we'll have memorabilia and souvenirs for sale.
Question.
Yes.
Okay, so the community building, was that a building that was already there, or was it moved onto the site?
It was no, it was not there. It was not there. It was, the material was moved in, it was constructed around 1974, 1975. It's almost 50 years old, okay? The inside,
Question. It seems to me, in my memory, maybe, that building was like a little craft shop or something.
yeah, they had a small museum, they had
Sell stuff.
that they sold, all of the money that the community, they raised money to go towards the operation of the Wolf House.
Yeah.
And to support the Wolf House and its operation. Yeah, sure, right.
That's why.
So no, you're absolutely right. And I've had a lot of people in the community over there tell me that as well. So here's the office space inside. Here's the hallway going back to the renovated restrooms. And then this is looking from the restrooms back towards the front door. So this open space right here, we hope to eventually have a small retail operation in there, okay? So there's the completed front and a small porch on the side. And then the boardwalk that goes from the south side parking lot for 100, 150 feet overlooking the river valley. We deep cleaned it. We replaced about a dozen boards and then sealed it with a water seal, as well as we resealed the two historical structures with water seal to help protect them as well. So there's the finished administrative building now. Other site improvements include an ADA walkway. So if you've been by the Wolf House the last 2 years, what have you seen sitting in that south side parking lot? You saw you saw a little 8-foot by 10-foot metal building.
Right.
The folks in Norfork affectionately call me the man in the box. Okay. Paul Newman and Cool Hand Luke ain't got nothing on me. I'll be moving out of the box into the renovated administrative building.
With bathrooms and everything. Bathrooms and everything.
Yeah. So it was important to have a walkway going from the south side parking lot, which now is our designated, in part, our designated ADA parking. So you have a walkway now, a little small fines, construction fines, road and packed. And the walkways, well, it's ADA compliant. It's roughly 48 inches wide. And it kind of serpentines across the property over to the Wolf House, okay, for general visitation or our ADA visitors, okay? And new security lighting was put on the west side, which is roughly 2 steel 8 to 9 foot poles with LED lights on them that's on a timer. We'd had some problems with vandalism. We'd had some problems with people partying back there. So this will keep the honest trespasser out, okay? So it was dark, totally dark on the backside. So we increased security lighting there. And I'm working with a security company right now for security monitoring on the site, okay? So, you know, all these things that we need to help bring about a more holistic approach to the operation, because we have a structure there that's almost 200 years old. It's the oldest public structure in Arkansas. The National Park Service did an extensive resource study on the Wolf House in 2013 and documented, and this is a lengthy qualifier, but it's the last remaining 2-story dog trot public structure in the United States. Now, meaning that it was built for a civic purpose, built for a territorial courthouse. There's structures that predate our structure made of stone or brick. There's structures out there that are made of timber, but for its use as a territorial courthouse, it's the last remaining one. So not only local and state significance, but national significance as well, okay? What do we hope to accomplish in the future with a second phase of development, if you will? Interior and exterior interpretive restoration of the John Wolf cabin. What I mean by that is the hardware that's on the John Wolf cabin right now is modern hinges with modern bolts, okay? Probably reconstruct the windows and the shutters. Probably put new doors on it. And so it'll take some good old-fashioned blacksmithing to create the hardware that complements hardware from this time period. Now, one of the things that I would like to see happen at the Wolf cabin is when we open it to the public, I want to open it to the public. I want an interior interpretive restoration done. So when you walk inside, you're looking at an early 19th century family's dwelling, okay, that is interpreted exactly as it would have been in the 1820s, all right? So those are some of the things on my punch list I hope we're able to accomplish. Restoration, well, new chimney, okay, got to put a new chimney on it. New shutters and hardware and replication of the family dwelling inside. Continued restoration of the Jacob Wolf House, new cedar shake shingle roof. We were able to make repairs this time, but it's at the end of its life expectancy. Those cedar shake roofs are good for about 20 years. So we need to put a new roof on it in the next couple of years. There's a few more floor joists that need to be addressed and replaced on the west side porch. And then an interpretive restoration on the inside, even though we've done well in moving in that direction with furniture, we need to make the county clerk's office more interpretively thematic. You know, we need to have props in there that when you walk into the county clerk's office, you're looking at a county clerk's office and post office. That's where the post office was. Jacob Wolf wore many hats. He was also the postmaster there. and then upstairs in the courtroom, and so we hope to address some of those things as well, okay? New outdoor wayside exhibit panels. Joan Gould, who was the project historian during the initial restoration, I've contacted her and hoping to retrieve information. The text, the photos on those wayside exhibit panels out on the property are getting to a point where they're illegible. So the interpretation's still good. We just need to have new ones, all right? And then we need to take those wayside exhibit panels, which was perfectly fine prior to the walkway being installed. Now we need to move them over and put them along the walkway for our ADA guests and then people who's going to be using the walkway now, okay? So that's something we got to address. And then eventually a new entrance sign. Now I've had some folks say, you know, when you arrived, there was an entrance sign out there in that parking lot that was carved by Junior Cobb. What say you? Where's it at? Okay. It's at our collection management facility in Little Rock. Okay. We took some original timbers that was left over from the restoration of the Wolf Cabin. That was too bad to continue to stay in the Wolf Cabin. New ones were fabricated, but they would make excellent future exhibits. In honoring Junior Cobb's work, okay, nationally renowned wood carver, we want to have a conservator repair and finish the sign. It's in really, really bad shape. It's weathered. Structurally, it's still fairly sound, but it needs to have the work of a professional conservator to bring it out looking as the day that Junior finished it, okay? So it needs to be conserved, it needs to be repainted and protected, and we're going to have that done. But right now, it's in an enclosed case, protective case that can breathe, and it's at our warehouse, our collection management facility in Little Rock, okay? So that's where we've been, and as of last week, we've just finished our first phase of development. Future operations, I'm hoping to have other staff, okay? It's not likely I will have another full-time person, another educator to assist with community outreach, operational support, and programming in the near future. Probably sometime after July 1, or when our next fiscal year starts, which is not uncommon at a new property. We'll initiate the hiring of a part-time person, okay? And then we'll plan for future development. The things that I've got on this punch list here are things that need to be done, and sometimes it's a hurry up and wait game on funding, but we've set precedent, and we're moving forward with preserving and protecting one of the state's most significant early 19th century historic and cultural sites, and we're going to continue to do so. And
You have volunteers that help you?
once I get up and running, and what I mean by that, once we get into the administrative building, and once we start moving forward, it may be another 30 days, 45 days before we make that transition. I'm working with contractors right now on, and then my IT department, on getting internet and phone service in there and all these type of things. We will start creating a volunteer base, all right? People's asked me, well, what would you use volunteers for there? Well, train you as docents, you know, to help out with programming, help out at the front desk operation in the administrative building, those type of things. I have a ground maintenance contractor that does all of our maintenance work. So volunteers at the Wolf House would primarily be gauged towards probably educational programming, maybe some fundraising. I'd have to get see where we stand on those type of activities. But there's a place for volunteers. It's a small operation. I would like to have at the ready 20 volunteers, and probably wouldn't work more than a half a dozen volunteers at any given time at the site. But yeah, there's a place for volunteers, absolutely, yeah.
Are you the one that gives all the tours now, or, I mean, is there somebody, what happens when you can't be there?
I am the only staff member at the property.
So if you have to go somewhere,
If I have to be off-site conducting business elsewhere until we get another position in place, then I have to close the property. Well, let me retract that. I don't want that to be misinterpreted. The property's open, self-guiding with the wayside exhibit panels. It's just not staffed, okay? So we are in our infancy, and we're moving forward, and these are logistical things that have to be addressed, okay? And they will be. And that'll be coming in the near future.
you've done so much in the last 2 years since you were here before, oh my God.
Well, it's you know, we're extremely happy that we're able to secure the funding, the grants, to do this type of work. And it's exciting for a guy like me who has a deep love for history and the preservation, protection, and promotion of it. So I get to be at ground zero, okay, and help move the property forward. And we have a special niche in the heritage tourism industry with this property. It's unique. There's not another property out there exactly like it. We have a lot of firsts in place there with that property and the Wolf House. And so as we move forward and grow and further develop the site, then more services will become available. And we have a 5-year plan in place. And we will be a great local and regional historic site to visit, absolutely.
So is it open to go in now,
Yes,
upstairs too?
the whole thing's open, yeah. Yeah, the Wolf House is open.
Every
I'm sorry?
day?
Yeah. Right now I'm there Monday through Friday. Starting probably Memorial Day weekend, I will change my schedule to better accommodate the public on one day on the weekend. Traditionally, a day-use property like this, Tuesday through Saturday, then it'll be unstaffed on Sunday and Monday. But again, it's self-guiding. The property's self-guiding as well. Yeah.
I'm not being facetious. I travel a lot to help people. You have to get your gift shop going.
Yeah.
They don't know they've been someplace unless they go to a gift shop.
Source of money too.
I'm serious.
And that's your
I
cash
mean,
cow.
get
Yes,
yourself
I did say that's
some
your cash
magnets for those refrigerators. And it would make a beautiful one. I'm serious. It's a way to make money.
What is your first name?
Mary,
Mary? Everything you said is absolutely true, and it's well appreciated, and you're preaching to the choir.
I'm glad. Fine job.
I have made the request with my chain of command for a retail operation, and that went in a couple of weeks ago. I had to wait until the construction projects were complete. So we're moving in that direction. Okay? Yeah.
Because it'll make you money.
It will certainly help. Most importantly,
Well,
a small retail operation, will bring in, I've managed retail operations at every property I've managed over the last 25 years. The most important thing is not so much that it's a cash cow. The most important thing is to provide the visitor with an interpretive thematic product that complements their visit there. If you want that magnet that is made of the Wolf House,
Yeah.
okay, or you want the hat or the t-shirt with the Wolf House on it, whatever the case may be, these are all logo type items that we're going to be producing. I've already been in contact with a vendor who represents 46 different
Well,
companies.
it's such a beautiful place.
And
I was biased.
I've looked at a wide array of items that could be available. So we're heading in that direction. It just takes a little while to get it set up.
You need your volunteers to be there to sell it.
Yeah, yeah. So, you guys are spot on. You're on top of it. Okay?
We want to volunteer.
You're nipping at the heels here. And I appreciate it because, yes, I want the same thing that you want. And it takes time to develop. Okay?
Why don't you share
Anything else?
some of your plans for Pioneer Days?
I'm sorry? Last year, we did not have much time to plan programs. I've spent most of this year ensuring that this Pioneer Days is going to be over the top. So I've been involved with living history, okay, for over 20 years. And I've developed several characters. Hunter, trapper, and trader from the early 1820s, 1830s. My new character that will be available on Saturday, May 18th, I'll be the county clerk, and I'll be giving you tours of the courthouse. But the Early Arkansas Reenactors Association, a well-known living history association in Arkansas that does educational programming all over the state. I've known these men and women for over 20 years. And so we're going to have blacksmith shop demonstrations. We're going to have lye soap making demonstrations. We're going to have 8 to 10 frontier camps set up on the property, each camp doing an individual program of Frontier Lifeways. We're going to have living history tours of the courthouse. And then on the far north end of the property, we'll have the Ox Ark, a 1820s replica 38-foot long keelboat dry docked on the property with the captain and his crew interpreting river travel and trade. So when you visit the site, either on May 17th or May 18th, programs will be going on from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., okay? And on May 18th, keep in mind that the whole town will have stuff going on. Crafts, vendors, food vendors, music, games for kids, a parade kicking it all off at 10 a.m., okay? We're kicking it off on Friday with programs at the historic site, and then that night from 6 to 9, I think, there will be music down at the community center like they have every Friday night. So, 2 days this year, and it's going to be 2 days every year after that, we hope. But and I'm working on an agreement with the Early Arkansas Reenactors Association to provide similar programs at this event every year, okay?
Would you give me the dates and times again, please?
Friday and Saturday, May 17th and 18th.
Okay.
And now I'm talking about the historic site. So our programs will be 9 to 4, both of those days. And then on Saturday, May 18th, there will be programs and events going on throughout the whole town of Norfork. Yeah. Yeah, right. Liberty, that's right. Liberty, Arkansas. So, I really appreciate the Baxter County Historical Society inviting me to provide you with an update. And I promise you in the future when I come back that either David or myself will have a workable projector.